Hello and welcome to the Birth Untethered podcast. I'm Shellie, a long-time doula, advocate and former university lecturer.
And I'm Kemi, a badass birth keeper, formerly a UK registered midwife.
Just a couple of rebels with decades of combined experience in pregnancy, birth and beyond getting together to share wisdom. We exist to equip birth workers, families and seekers of truth with informed choice, not fear. Come as you are, learn what they don't teach. This is the Birth Revolution and you're all invited. And welcome to this episode of the Birth Untethered podcast with me, Shellie, the beautiful Kemi, and today we have with us the gorgeous Simon, who's coming to speak to us about his experiences of birth, fatherhood, being married to a birth activist, how that ruins his life, all that sort of thing.
Poor guy.
Don't feel sorry for him. He's very well looked after.
It's true.
We've had the lovely Alex and Becca on the podcast to share some male experiences. I'm just aware that a lot of podcasts, when they talk about birth experience, it's the person who's given birth, so often women's experiences of what birth is like, what their thoughts and feelings around that are like, what their experiences of maybe if things are traumatic or things are brilliant. It's their feeling around that, and we don't often hear male perspectives. There are some podcasts that offer that, and we've mentioned those in previous episodes when we've had guests on who have found that. So I sort of felt that it was important to get more partners' perspectives about how they feel about birth. And Simon has had very different experiences with three births that he's attended as a father. His first two, which were highly medicalised and quite challenging, and then the birth that he had with our son, us together, where of course I intended to free birth with nobody there, but we had lots of discussions about what would make us both feel safest, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, and why that's important as a couple to have those conversations that might actually be quite difficult to have, but when you have them means that you are both being held in a way that you feel safe with the experience, and that there's not then going to be resentment afterwards, because often people do feel that like they haven't had a proper discussion with their partner about what is important for them and what feels safe for them, and you haven't come to an agreement where you both feel happy and satisfied with the answer, and that can be very challenging to then manage that when you are tired after the birth. Even if everything goes really well in the birth, it can be difficult with those then challenges of parenthood. So that's really the focus of what we're going to be speaking about today. And I suppose, Simon, before we start, thank you for coming on. Thank you for everything, basically. I think I should say, really, because
thank you for asking.
Si just helps me out. My birth work wouldn't really be possible without the support that Simon gives me, and I'm very grateful for that. So I should start crying already about how much I love you, but yeah.
I thought it was going to be me who was getting blubbing.
Kemi, say something, give me a minute.
The helping out is easy. I'll step in here. The helping out is easy because it just works well, and I think we've chosen a lifestyle that supports the way we both want to work. So for me, it's not difficult. In fact, I'm just making the lifestyle a bit easier because I'm just leaving my currently employed job. I've not been employed very much in my life. It's not to say I'm not employable. It's more to say that I'd rather be self-employed, and so I've just it'll be as of Christmas I'll have ditched my salaried job, which was a nice steady income but wasn't bringing me happiness, and also it did impinge quite a lot from time to time on Shelley's peripatetic working style. So so it's working out well that way, and so the support is part of the life, so it doesn't make it difficult or anything. It's no big favour, Shellie.
Do we have more to look forward to with you showing up in reels, etc.?
Yeah, I hope so.
Which makes my day.
Well, that's nice
He's
to
very
hear.
good. He takes direction well. He's very sweet. You know, I sort of say to him, no, more eyebrow, raise more or no,
Yeah,
okay, you've got to
yeah.
sound meaner than that, or more
When he
haughty.
raises an eyebrow, right, I tell you, I want to reach through the screen and slap him with the cushion, because he really does
I remember it
remind
well.
me of some of the obstetricians that I used to come across in my work. So,
Oh yeah, we did have fun beating you with the cushion, didn't we?
I'm
Sort
lucky it
of,
was a cushion, not a cricket bat.
well, if you'd had one available, I understand you can't keep one on the boat. So,
Could do, but I won't.
Okay. Now I've composed myself. I'll ask some questions. Oh, I'm such a big softie. Before we talk about specific births, I wonder how you would describe your relationship to parenthood today, and how you feel like your births impacted your role as a dad. Do you feel like it had an impact, the different births, of how you felt about things, how things were?
Yeah, without any question, every experience we have in life shapes the way we feel about things, and even bad experiences are good for that reason, because it gives you perspective and also allows you to understand people who have been through similar situations. You know, if you have a great life the whole way through, then you've probably got very little to offer anyone. So I think people who've endured difficulties, especially emotional difficulties, have a lot to offer if they feel they can talk about it, and I'm happy to do so. So yeah, the births themselves the first ones gave me a very dim view of the process of becoming a father, becoming a parent. The birthing process itself was just, there was nothing nice at all about it, and I've got a lot to talk about that later. Obviously, you're going to go on to that, and then to see the contrast of how it could be, but still not having had a good experience up until that point, further shaped my view. And if, a very big if here, in fact it's not even an if I was to ever do it again, I would now be perfectly situated to have fantastic birth. So you need people's experiences, or people to be able to convey experiences very clearly, in a way that they will understand, to get the most of it across. I was talking earlier about reading books on the subject. They're helpful for the theory side of things, but very few can convey how you will feel. In fact, I'd probably say none of them really can convey how you would feel. It takes you by surprise. No matter how you think it's going to be, how you think you're well prepared, you're taken by surprise every time. And I don't know how much more you want me to say about that. I'll go into detail if you don't stop me. But I think that yes, it dramatically shaped the way I feel about the whole process. I'm in a properly understanding position now. Aided a lot by the work you're doing right now and the stories you're telling me about. I despair at the whole way it's become. It's not a medicalised process, shouldn't be. It's a natural process. It's not something that hospitals should have any part in unless it's gone badly wrong. So that's my basic feeling. I don't know why people go to hospital to have children. It's a crazy thing. That's where you go when you're ill, not birth.
I suppose a question that leads on from that then is reflecting back to your first two babies, which were in hospital. What back then? What did you believe, if you can remember? Sorry, that sounded really rude, but it's quite a while ago now. But what did you believe birth was supposed to be like before you had experienced it? Do you feel like you can go back in time to that memory now that you've had all of these different experiences, and then years of me going on and on about physiological birth and stuff, really when you probably didn't want to hear it, you poor thing?
Well, first of all, I can remember. Those things are never forgotten. They stay with you forever. So it doesn't matter how ancient I might look, I can still remember those times. Well, my expectation, and I did have a kind of expectation, which really is another thing you probably shouldn't have in any kind of formal way. Not like a script. Definitely not like a script. It's an impromptu process. you go off your parents' expectations in so many ways, what you are told, and I think this is part of the problem, because what you are told is very much out of date by the time you're told it. So it perpetuates the issues that should have gone away by now. And my expectation was that my first child would probably be born in hospital, because you don't know how it's going to go. Not that you ever do, really. And subsequent children, if the first one went okay, would be had at home. That's how I was born. I was born not in hospital as such, but a nursing home, so it's probably actually better than a hospital back in the day. And my brother was born at home, and both without any drama, childbirth, and my expectations were that I'd follow a similar process. But of course, it changed a lot between hospital, changed a lot between me being born and my children being born. So anything I might have been told was just completely different. So no, it was a completely new experience to me. Nothing there was anything like I'd expected. You expect to be at least explained to about what might happen, how things go, and basically just encouraged and put at ease. But there's none of that. If you're the father, you are really a bit of an obstruction, because there's yet another person which hasn't been taken into account. So their processes don't really involve the father, not that I could see. They may be there. Well, they're there, and if you ask questions, you may or may not get an answer. But it's not something that you are made to feel comfortable to do. So they're busy, and in and out, and there's bright lights and noisy machines, and it's like you're going into some kind of factory, an operation, and it's exactly how it's treated. It's like an operation. So even before any kind of external interventions are taking place, there's already the intervention of that environment, which disrupts everything and doesn't put you at ease. It was different to what I expected. And when things failed to progress, which I can easily see why they did now, you start to think something's not right, because you expect, or I expected, labour to progress from a gradual process to eventual birth in a fairly ramping up linear way. But no, any time the whole process can be halted by what's going on in the room. And from the father's point of view, nothing's explained that this is normal, because for them that's now normal, because their own processes cause interruption, and it's not explained. So you suddenly think something's going wrong. So you start asking questions: why is this stopped? Why is that doing that? And why's this monitor doing this and everything else? And they give you very glib answers, and they don't see your distress. They don't seem to see your distress, because probably they are too. They're in a stressful environment of their own making, and all part of the cycle of how it goes. Just to kind of skip the whole story, I see now the whole of the medical industry, not just for births, but births really bring it home to you, that things aren't dealt with at an early stage. They are allowed to become an emergency, and then they do their stuff. And they create that emergency by preventing nature from taking its natural course, where you'd end up with a baby being born without too much drama. But no, they do their very best without realizing to halt this process, and then the body gets distressed that it becomes really medically not safe anymore, and then they have to operate or extract the baby by whatever means they feel fit at the time, and that is just horrible, because as a father you see things stopping, you think this isn't right, discomfort builds up, people start fussing about, injections start going in, still no proper explanation as to what's going on, and the father isn't given a voice at the time. They're not there so that the information is being shared. Something's being dealt with, but you don't really understand what, and it looks like something's gone wrong.
In those moments, do you feel that if somebody had been explaining to you what was happening more clearly, or involving you in what was happening, that would have felt safer for you?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't feel unsafe for me. There was no question of that. It didn't feel unsafe. It just felt that somebody else was in danger. It felt like, the mother's in danger, baby's in danger. And you're led to believe that's a possibility just by the fact you're not told it isn't. It's a natural thought process. When you can see something's not going the way you expect it to go, you think something's wrong. And you're suddenly in an emergency situation where everything changes. The mother's rushed off into the operating theatre. In my case, both my first children were born by emergency cesarean. The word emergency cesarean. Nothing started off as an emergency, but it became that way. And this is exactly what I'm saying. So you have something, everything's normal. It's delayed by the process being counterproductive. Then it becomes an emergency. So you have an emergency seizure to bring your baby into the world.
I think probably what a lot of people experience is that they believe that the emergency has happened as a mother because of a problem with their body. But what you were witnessing was actually that the environment around was what then, continued to, introduce things were interrupting and then caused an emergency.
I'm talking partly in hindsight, of course. In fact, you just jogged some memory because, yes, there's this kind of belief that's pushed around, and all these things get spread by rumor and stuff. But it's incredibly powerful. I believed that the human head of a baby is pretty big compared to the birth canal of a mother, and that is true. But it's not incompatible. It's a close fit, but it's fine that way. But you're not given that feeling. You're given the feeling that you've got to somehow produce a human being through an orifice that wasn't designed for that, and it is. But it seems that people say things. Oh yeah, but we've evolved, and we've got the wrong proportions nowadays. It's not that, but that's what you feel. My mother of my first, she's quite petite, and I thought that might be part of an issue. I'm quite tall, and that belief was reinforced in the prenatal meetings. They said, "Oh, you're quite small, aren't you?" And instantly, "Oh, it's that kind of cautionary tone in their voice." And your husband's very tall. And I thought, "Oh Christ, blimey, we shouldn't be having children. We've got the wrong basic ingredients to have an easy journey with this." So you're set up to fail right from the beginning, and that's the kind of way it went. I thought, mum's too
became
small,
a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so all those things do exactly that. I don't think that the medical team know that even. I don't think they even know that. I think their training is completely biological and pharmacological. There's no insight to there being a human being there that needs to understand and include them in that. They don't understand what they're saying and the effect it has. They say it. It's
Simon,
all part of their processes, but they don't understand what effect it has on them or the father.
But Simon, I refuse to believe that people that seem to have the minimum entry requirements to become these registrants lack the common sense to understand that the bones move, that the vagina unfolds, that if you're in an upright position, the mechanics works. I used to go into schools before I got really busy as a home birth midwife. I used to go into schools and just show a couple of diagrams and ask questions. It worked for me because I'm quite a visual learner and I don't like to be told the answers. So I just taught in that way, which really seemed to suit many of the children in the room. So they would usually be early teens. And I would just show them diagrams and say, how do you think this will get out of this? And they all knew that you had to be upright. And they all knew that vaginas weren't fixed stainless steel objects, that they were malleable. They would figure out, well, the vagina would stretch to allow the baby down. I say, even better than that, do you know that the baby is made in a way that the bones move? They slide over each other. The suture lines aren't filled. So I'd have to tell them that bit, but they'd work out the rest. So I refuse to believe that adults going into training don't already know that. I've had the training. It was
Did they
taught,
tell you?
Yes, of course, unless they slept through that
They
lecture.
just don't listen, because there was a doula that said that this midwife said, no, you're over 42 weeks. This is really dangerous. Why have you let this go so long? Your baby's skull is going to be ossified and it won't move.
But we were taught the ossification of the suture lines, the ones towards the rear of the baby's skull happen by about 6 months postpartum. The ones that towards the front of the cranium take almost 18 months. And we were told that the process isn't kick-started until the baby's born.
Yeah,
So,
this is the disconnect, because the teaching is there. I mean,
yes.
even in my osteopathic teaching, I understood that. And
Yes.
prior to that, I understood that when I did biology at school. But something undoes that belief.
That's
that
what I'm
that
saying.
It'll be, yeah.
Something
undoes
so
the
it's
belief.
called,
That-
you know, like you were talking about antepartum care, which I call grooming. We are also groomed through midwifery training. And it's the denial of that is created this like powder keg that is blowing up in maternity services now. All these groomed people running around. You see, the clarity, I've been quiet because Simon speaks with such clarity and compassion, but I don't want anyone to think it's okay that you will allow yourself to be groomed to the point where you see, you know, metaphorically speaking, explosions happening in labour and birth, carrying a woman into major abdominal surgery, and you're so brainwashed that you're not going to say, is it something that I'm doing? Is it something about this environment? You know, because honestly, with the kind of way that we're cutting women open at the moment, that would literally be, you only had a 1 in 2 chance of you and your baby surviving childbirth. And we know that's not the case. We're going to be having a conversation about this in the future in the podcast. That was never the case. You only had a 50% chance of survival because you're pregnant. So, sorry, Simon, just really, really emphatically agreeing with you. When you watch this back, you'll see me just nodding my head. But I do not want us to take our compassion and understanding to the point where we're allowing this stupidity to continue. Especially you, as a father, putting you in the corner and expecting you to shut up, not advocate, to accept all this crap you're hearing being spoken, especially you as a professional who understands anatomy and physiology better than the people in the room because they slept through the lectures. And I know they slept through them because I was there and awake through those lectures. Okay, yeah. I'll shut up now.
Well, I totally agree with what you're saying there.
With those experiences that you had in your first 2 births, was it both that they ended up with augmentation with synthetic oxytocin during labour that led to the emergency caesareans? And I know one of them was a crash caesarean, so general anaesthetic, you know, had caused an emergency situation there.
Were both labours induced?
The first one definitely was. I remember her being on a syntocin drip, okay. And that, and there was a fetal scalp monitor. Can't remember what you call it, for my daughter, and I could see.
Were you told any risks of that?
Was your daughter the first baby? And
Yes.
Okay.
No, wasn't told any risks about it at all. They just said that it would help. So you're told absolutely the wrong thing.
Just like what was said
helps.
in Delivery, the film.
Yeah, it makes the contractions stronger, but there was no progress. She was on her back, you know, all the wrong things, really. Very uncomfortable in her back. So obviously now I know that she was completely in the wrong position for her and the whole process.
Yeah.
And the syntocin was just making things worse. And then
was that the cat one, was the first birth, the crash section.
This was that went in the first one. So then she had a epidural put in, and that made her completely oblivious to the pain that she was under, or the contractions. And then I could see the fetal heart rate dropping a huge amount in between contractions. And at one point, they just called it, rushed her in. I do remember somebody, I can't remember if it was the surgeon or registrar or some male person who didn't introduce himself to me, so that's why I can't remember who he was or what he was. But I remember him being upset about the failure of natural process. I remember that. And that stuck in my mind because I kind of agreed, just instinctively at the time. But I never saw him again or anything like that. And then, so she was crashed into theatre, and
but there was no natural process. There was no natural process.
Well, there wasn't. No. So I mean, it failed a long time before he said anything.
Yeah.
Failed as soon as we went into soon as we went into hospital, really, or as soon as we left the house.
As soon as he left the house, yeah.
So and then the second one, strangely. The second one is less clear to me, but the aftermath of the second one, it really hit me because a similar process happened, except this time I insisted that I went into surgery with them. I wanted to see my son then being born. Didn't know he was born until then. And they didn't want me in there. I could tell that was clear, but I insisted. So I went in and they gowned me up, and I was there. And I remember a few things. So I remember the first thing I remember was I was holding mother's hand. I remember her hand suddenly going limp, just kind of dead as the anaesthetic took hold. And then I remember the first incision, and I remember then the way they open up. I remember the operation quite well, the way they open up the uterus and everything like this. And the way it was torn open, I didn't know about that, but I understand why and what they do, and so I don't have a problem with that now. But at the time, I thought, "Wow, really?" And then I remember my son being pulled out, and I remember him being not a good colour, sort of. What I'm a bit colourblind, but I would call it like a purpley colour, and dark. And then when he then cried, I can't remember how he cried, why, but when he did, the colour came from the middle of his body and went out to the extreme. It looked like a weird LED light show. It was just the pinkness went from one end to the other, and that was quite amazing to see. And then I was outside again, but I can't remember how. Can't remember, ushered out or whatever, really. So they said, "Well, you were there for it," but because again nothing was explained afterwards about what I'd seen, etc. I had all these images with no proper understanding of what they all were. I mean, I knew a lot about the biological processes, but the operation processes. So it was actually quite traumatic. But I'm still glad I did it.
Yeah.
But then I went home, ran the bath, sat in that and just cried.
Yeah. I think this is something that I see very much missing when I'm supporting people in hospitals. This is not really an explanation of what they are offering, what that entails, what that procedure entails, what that means for you, and what that's going to look like, that you can decline aspects of it, with regard to in induction, for example. It's like almost that people is assumed that once you start on that induction train, you don't have a choice and you have to stay on it until the end, whatever the outcome. They don't explain that actually things can be stopped and time can be taken to rest and all that sort of thing. That's not done. And it's something that I see, and we've spoken about before on the podcast about in emergency situations as well, that, in terms of drilling of emergency situations in hospitals, I don't understand why there isn't somebody on the team that is there to hold the people that the emergency is happening to. I think often paramedics understand the importance of this, that they try to talk to the person and keep them calm, because it makes such a difference to how that is then framed moving forward. The trauma, you know, and the healing of it, because I think I've spoken about on the podcast about a birth that was that where there was a hemorrhage, and they wanted to take the baby and cannulate the baby in the same room as this mother was losing blood and potentially going unconscious and, you know, potentially losing her life. Really, it was quite serious hemorrhage. There was lots of, you know, infusions and everything of blood, and there was a thing going around constantly on the bleepers: major obstetric hemorrhage in room 4, major, you know, just going over and over and over. You know, great way to give somebody PTSD. Luckily she didn't speak English, but I said to them, I stepped in and said, let's just keep it calm, because they were shouting at each other. There was obviously a bit of animosity between the anaesthetist and other members of the team. You know, she was quite a sharp person, and they didn't like that, and they were like this as this woman's, you know, potentially bleeding to death. They wanted to take the baby over and have them screaming in the corner, you know, as all this is happening. And I was like, the baby's fine right now. I'm going to hold this baby really close to this mum so that all that she sees is her baby, and I like basically block out the view of all of the headless chickens running around shouting at each other, not, you know, staying out of their way so they could get lines in and everything, because obviously they were trying to get lines in to get enough fluid and blood into her that she didn't crash. But I just very calmly was showing her her baby and saying, look at his little fingers, look at his little toes. And that's what she focused on. And I just said, don't worry about all of this. They're just going to poke you with needles a lot because they need to get some fluid in. They're going to solve it. I'm here with you. The baby's okay. To just try and not say everything's going to be all right, but in this moment, actually, here is your baby. Isn't he beautiful? And so when she then reflected back on the situation afterwards, with somebody who spoke her language, I didn't speak her language, so we had someone who could talk to her. You know, they wanted to check in that she was okay, because this was a life-threatening, quite traumatic situation. She didn't think it was traumatic at all. She said, oh no, Shellie was there. She was just showing me the baby. He was so sweet, and she was showing me all his fingers and toes. And she said, I know other people were doing things in the room, but no, I felt perfectly fine and safe. And this is the thing, that to prioritise that, so that the people that are having a difficult time have somebody that's holding them and helping them feel safe, makes such a difference. It's like when often when people say to me, oh no, I don't want students in the room, you know, if they're birthing in a hospital, I often say, actually, do you know what? Probably the person that's going to be kindest to you and hold you most lovingly will be the student in the room. If you don't want them to practice procedures on you, you know, that's fair enough. You can absolutely say, no, I don't want my yoni sewed up by a first year student or whatever. I probably wouldn't ask a first year student to sew that up. But, you know, they actually have the time to be there for you and care for you and do loving things for you and hold a loving space. So do you think that would have been something that would have helped you in those situations, Simon?
Yes, certainly. The first year student has also not been there so long. They've become hardened to the process and
100%.
grown a thick skin and lost the ability to connect with the parents. So yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, in that situation, and I know this now, that, you know, you're in high anxiety, so your memory will be reinforced about whatever has any kind of meaning or what you think might have some meaning. So if it had been somebody reassuring me and saying, oh, look, your baby's great, everything's normal with the baby, and look how lovely he is, etc., then that would have been my memory. And I'd have been far less aware of any potential dangers. But as it was, that's all I had to think about. So my memories, unfortunately, were reinforced to the negative aspects of what was going on rather than the positive outcome. No one spoke about the positive outcome at all. There was absolutely none of that. And it seemed almost like the baby was a byproduct of a process rather than the reason for it. It's incredibly mechanized. No, that
I think that's so true.
Everything.
That's so true, and something that really, that's why it makes me very cross that doulas are often restricted from going into theatre with couples that they're supporting, and it seems absolutely outrageous to me. And things are cited like, oh, infection risk or space in the theatre. I've never been in a theatre where there hasn't been massive amounts of space, and a doula is going to be less of an infection risk than a medical student coming in, because they're not going around the hospital visiting lots of different patients. They have been 100%. With this family the entire time. So the reasons are just bullshit reasons, which just makes me cross, because this couple have a doula there for emotional support, and if birth has not gone well, this is the most emotionally difficult situation for them. And so us not being able to be in the room to explain, this is what's happening now, you may feel, you know, this happening, that's normal, it's okay, you know, if you feel worried at any time, just let us know. We can tell them to pause for a moment if you need that, if the sensation is too much or whatever it is, you know, so that they understand. And often it's not explained, you know, because the thing is, the theatre staff, it is like they're on autopilot, aren't they? They do this all day, every day, especially now that about 50% of people going into maternity wards are having cesareans. They're just like, prep one, wipe them down, do this, do that, and they don't realise that for the people coming in, they have never experienced being in an operating theatre in their life, most likely. You know, most people have not had an operation before. They definitely haven't gone into the operating theatre awake, if they have had an operation previously, likely. So they don't know what it's going to be like. They don't understand that people might move around the room. They don't understand that they might be, you know, they're just talking about ordinary stuff. Because for the staff it's an ordinary day, but yet for the people here, this is the birth of their baby. This is an amazing event that needs to be, you know, held with that kind of reverence, and that doesn't happen. So thank you for highlighting that actually having somebody explaining to you in the moment would have been, you know, helpful, and, you know, to frame things in a way that helps you to process it and understand it, because otherwise you are left with lots of images of very unusual things that you are not ever going to see in any other kind of situation if you're not a surgeon yourself. It leaves lots of questions, doesn't it?
I refuse to believe that no one's thought through that, you know, a father having to leave his family in the unit, go home and attempt to rehabilitate himself in tears in a bathtub, trying to soothe his nervous system, is the healthiest person to then be left alone with this new family. It's I everyone can see, you know, and Simon, thank you, because I know you really reached a really painful place to bring that to us, but there has to be this understanding that the way we are behaving in maternity services is causing huge trauma, not just to the woman, but also her partner, the co-parent, the person that needs to go forward and build a life with this new being. It's horrendous.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I feel that what needs to be remembered is that the decision to have a family was a joint one, nearly always. Sometimes it isn't, but once you know you're going to have a family, then it should be a shared experience the whole way through. It's a three-person experience, obviously the unborn child and the two parents. It is that way the whole way up until giving birth, which is probably the most important part. Well, it is the most important part. It's when the strongest memories are made. The relationships, the bonding, all of it occurs then. And if one person isn't present, the father, it's no wonder dads have difficulties and dads become, you know, for all sorts of dysfunctions that dads can have in families. I know mums do too, but it's a different set of problems. Important, but in other ways. I know we're here to talk more about how fathers experience it, so that's why I'm saying that. But
in the years after those births, Si, how do you feel that the effects of what happened to you, what you experienced, how do you feel that affected your relationship with yourself, with your children, with your partners? Do you feel that it had an impact on how you were able to bond with your children and things after that? Such tough beginnings.
Yes, it made a difference, and I want to bring in to this the birth of our son because it's different. So the bonding process is clearly it's interrupted by the things we've been talking about, and that is an issue. It affected the way I behave, I think, and I saw hints of my father in me, so I understand how he must have been treated as well. and the way I bonded with my children, it wasn't instant. And in fact, my son, I think, because it's probably the second time along through the same kind of difficult process, my first son took quite a long time. Really, it did take a while. It happened more as I got to know him. There was no biological love there in the first place, which is terribly sad. But with my third child, me, the third child, it was very much different because we had a much better understanding of what was going on. We took, you helped me do this, take steps to understand everything, how we'd feel, what had gone before in my experiences as being a father for my first two children, and that really helped. So apart from a small hiccup in the middle, which we can talk about later if you like, it was a great experience, a very positive experience, and the bonding was pretty much instant.
Yeah, I remember you saying that you couldn't believe how different the experience had felt, and actually that you admitted to me later that in a way it has made parenting tougher for you. That bonding experience of a physiological birth where we got that massive oxytocin peak and you immediately fell in love with Seb in that moment and just loved him just so huge amounts instantly, that it actually has made it quite difficult because you become more sensitive. So, if Seb, when he was little, if he'd trip and hurt himself, it would actually be really challenging for Simon because he's so close to him in a way that he really didn't have, that kind of built over time with his other children. But I'd have to sit him down and make him sweet tea, because he'd get a bit wobbly if Seb hurt himself. Yeah. And the thing, Simon's a medic. He's been teaching osteopathic, he taught osteopathic medicine for 30 years. So it's not like he's shy, he's taken people's blood, he's done all, so he's not a kind of person that would naturally feel like wobbly I know some people are. So you really felt that difference between highly medicalised birth and the trauma that was associated with that, and the necessary detachment in order to cope with the situation. It didn't just stop at the hospital. That continued on and was something that you had to work on over years, and that it felt completely different to when you had, you were part of a physiological birth at home, a predominantly undisturbed physiological birth at home of your baby, and how you felt about that. So
even after the good experience of number 3, the prior experiences of number 1 and number 2, I hope you don't mind me talking like that, I want to avoid names, is the prior experiences still coloured the way I was for many years, throughout our boys growing up, and I feel I've reached a point of equilibrium now, but those prior experiences and the way I felt because of my detachment, I suppose, partial detachment from my children earlier, I loved them, but in a different way. That still coloured the way I behaved, and I had to do a lot of thinking about how I was behaving and interacting to what's the word? Settle down into a comfortable state. And you're just fighting with your own personality in a way. It felt like that. It's not my personality. I think of myself as quite a caring person, but sometimes things would detach me. But not anymore. So it's a tricky thing. People don't realise, but it goes on long time after it starts, the negative effects.
But it's protective, isn't it? Even though it's like when you repeatedly, this not like the way we create calluses, for instance. So the callus is there as it's a protective mechanism that we have, But obviously, you know, that thickening means there's less sensitivity there. So it's a good reason why it's there, but you've got less sensitivity. So you were obviously doing everything you could to cope with the traumas that had been visited on you, for number one, and number two. And thankfully now you've like undergone healing to be able to allow that sensitivity back. But of course it's going to take a long time, because we're sensitive beings, and you know, as we all know now, trauma does affect the way the brain looks when it's scanned. It's actually a physical manifestation of the trauma. It's not just something airy-fairy. So you've done well to work with that. And obviously the choices that you and Shellie made allowed that space for that healing to commence.
I wouldn't have been able to do it without, you know, without that emotional support from Shellie. You retain the shell if it's not safe to break into it.
100.
Yeah.
So you need a lot of support. You need that. You definitely need that understanding from within the relationship. Without that, it'd be an uphill struggle, and I don't know if anyone would really manage it. Perhaps, but I think the immediate will really interrupt the previous. So if that previous is not allowed, it's not taken into account and helped to heal it, the immediate day-to-day stuff will just prevail, and it never gets dealt with. So you've got to have that, and if you can't get that between yourselves, you need to go and seek it somehow. I truly believe that you need some external therapy from bloody good therapists to understand it, to allow that to happen.
Yeah, we've spoken about this, that when I was pregnant, that I wanted to try to help Simon with what had happened for him previously and help him to come to a place where he could feel more calm about the birth, because I could see that he was concerned, and rightly so, because his two previous experiences had ended in crash emergency cesareans where he was sidelined, you know, and he'd been left with all of this awful feeling about birth. That was his experience of birth, you know. And like he's saying, you can't just read in a book about physiological birth and how great it is when you have viscerally experienced it twice in a very, very difficult way. You can't believe that that's going to be what's going to happen. And so I found it quite difficult to engage in antenatal understanding about things, about really hearing things, you know. It just wasn't really sinking in because he had that shell there. I had a hypnobirthing instructor come to talk to us to try to help him. We didn't get, I just didn't get involved in any kind of antenatal education classes, because I just thought, well, I don't really trust that stuff. I don't, you know, and I wasn't really interested in that kind of thing. I thought, well, I'll make friends after birth, because I was partly thinking we don't need any more negative experiences of people in a group, then, you know, reinforcing Simon's fear of what's happened. So I sort of wanted to stay separate from that.
Shellie just nailed it. I honestly think that most antenatal preparation at the moment, especially in a group setting, is exposing people to more groupthink, grooming and fear. I do.
Yeah.
I remember them myself, previous ones.
Yeah, we had a one-to-one session with a hypnobirthing instructor, which I think did help Simon a bit to feel calmer.
She did help a lot. Something I want to say before I forget, because I said about the apart from the blip in the middle, people wonder what I was going to say there. Everything went fine. The birth was going according to plan, exactly on the day we expected it to. I mean, everything was just working out nicely, and your labour was ramping up, everything absolutely good. And then you got to the point of transition, and unless anyone's experienced that before, you cannot account for how you're going to feel about it, because somebody's suddenly behaving in a way you've never seen, they've never seen, and in my previous medical background, if somebody starts behaving in a way you've never seen before, normal, something's wrong. It's just one of those medical things, or very likely to be. So that was probably the first thought in my mind. I'm not sure of this. This doesn't look right. She can't even talk to me because she's well into it. So unable to communicate with me. I don't really know what's going on. And so I panicked a bit and called midwife and or called whatever number we had. And that, you see, would have been the point where a doula would really have helped me, because all I needed was the assurance that this is normal. Fine, let it carry on.
It's perfectly normal for someone to moo like a cow and not speak to you. That's okay.
This is what transition is all about, and things are happening now. It won't be long. That would have been it. But of course, people did come suddenly when I obviously made a phone call. They didn't for a while, but they did, and it wasn't great. Paramedics came in, never seen a woman in a pool before for birth. They wanted her out because they weren't trained to deal with anyone in the pool.
No.
That is that, and so this poor Shellie had to get out of the pool, and she was still not really able to talk properly, and she was trying to halt things now. But then eventually a midwife who really understood the situation came in, got rid of the paramedics, got Shellie back in the pool, and things re-established.
Lovely.
So yeah, it's about having the right person there when you need them. But without that, and the experience of going through it, you're suddenly in a situation where you don't know and you feel out of control and no one can explain anything. If you're guided through that first time, I could deal with it the second time. I'm not going to, fourth time, I now know I could. I could be a reasonable doula myself, I think.
Yeah, and this for our birth is really where our two traumas intersected in such a way that actually reflecting back, I didn't want anyone in my birth space because of my previous trauma. I wanted to be just Simon and me there really, and not to have anyone else. I feel safe with him. I trust him completely. I've known him for a very long time. We were very, very good friends and had spoken about all of the stuff that had happened in my past, in depth, and he'd held me very safely. So I knew that he could hold a safe space for me, and I trusted in my body that, if I needed help, I would let him know. But with his previous trauma, he had that worry of not seeing. He also had never seen somebody get to that point of labour before, because they had been so disturbed and interrupted and medicalised by that point. So he had not seen instinctive behaviour of going into yourself. I just couldn't really speak. It was so intense. I had a very rapid labour. It was really 2 hours from the establishment of the labour to the baby being there. For a first baby, that's quite fast. So I just couldn't really speak. I couldn't say I'm fine. And I guess my looking at him wasn't enough to let him know psychically I'm good. It's just a lot, it's just intense. So those two traumas intersected, where I didn't want an external person coming in, not even a doula there, because I didn't want somebody else in that space. But actually, if he had a doula or a birth keeper who could have just gone, from outside the door, it's all good, that's a normal sound, she's fine, held him in that space. And we wanted to sort of touch on that today, because I think often partners are like, I don't want a doula or a birth keeper, I don't want it to get in the way, I want to be there for you. And actually, if you haven't seen it before, it can be very scary. And if it's somebody you love and you're looking after, it can be very difficult. And I had a conversation with a doula the other night. I was at a little doula Christmas party, which was really lovely. That my friend Grania organised, and the doula was saying that she got quite cross with her husband, about the way he was in the birth, and saying that he didn't really want to do it again, because she'd had normal physiological births, everything had been fine, and it was intense for her, but she was like, well, we had a baby, it was all great, isn't the baby cute? And she'd got all of those lovely hormones, her own natural hormones, that have basically helped her forget about the tough bit and love the experience. But as a partner doesn't get that, and so her partner just watched her in this intense situation, making noises that he'd never heard before. And it's very difficult to watch somebody you love in discomfort going through this rite of passage, going through this transformation. And she hadn't appreciated how hard that was for him. She'd been a doula, she'd been a lot of births. I watch people give birth all the time, it's fine, what are you talking about? Then her sister had her attend her birth, and she found it incredibly, incredibly difficult to watch her sister go through birth, because she loves her. She loves her in a different way. A doula can bring love into a situation and really want the best for you and hold you, but they don't love you in the same way that your partner or a family member loves you. And to then watch you go through that discomfort can be very difficult. And so that really helped her understanding of why having somebody else to hold a partner is really helpful. And we've spoken about this on the podcast before, that often I find that once women get into established labour, they don't actually really need a doula there, because they're in a physiological birth, their hormones are helping them cope with all of the sensations. They actually are just focusing on what they need to do, but it's about holding the space so that the partner or anybody else in the room, when they're like, is that noise normal, is this okay, is it going on too long, is everything all right, that someone can go, everything's looking okay, yeah, we can stay calm, all's good, let's take a breath. You can have a break if you need one, if it's a long birth. Sometimes you just can't watch it for such a long time and you need to step away, that you've got someone there that can hold the space and switch in and out. And so on reflection, I think we think that if we had a doula at the birth, I wouldn't have needed a doula, but Simon did, and that it would have actually been really helpful for him. And he never then probably would have called the paramedics. And that we look back and think, luckily we had this amazing midwife who came in very calmly, ushered the paramedics out, said I could get straight back in the pool. I literally dove off the bed into the pool, and Seb then came quite shortly after that, because she said to Simon, obviously the time dilation for me, I don't really remember. I don't think she was there very long before she said to Simon, well, do you want to catch this baby? If so, you better get in the pool, basically. So for me it wasn't very long. I don't know in reality what it was, but now, after all of the years of me doulaing and me, often venting to Simon when I get home about what I see as midwives come in and all the disruption, and let me do your blood pressure, let me do this, that and the other, I'm not sure where you are in labour, all this kind of thing, that she was one of the rare gems in the system who was completely respectful. She never touched me. She never touched me at all. She didn't try to listen into the baby. I think he was just literally about to come, honestly. That she just let Simon catch him, let Simon get the placenta, all that kind of thing. So
yeah, you saved the day, because had she been a different kind of midwife, it would have gone down a medicalised route yet again. And so I'm so glad it didn't, because 3 times, when you're going to change your mind about it after 3 times? So with the preparation we'd had, so it's about recognizing where things are at the time that they're happening. I think the partner is often thought of as the weakest link, so the medical situation tries to eliminate them by removing them, without realizing that although they're the weakest link, they're very important for that family's life from that point on.
I don't think it's an oversight or a mistake. That you are minimised, put off in the corner, discouraged from understanding, discouraged from feeling confident in that situation. I don't think it's an oversight.
You think it's done to deliberately diminish their influence? Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
I refuse to believe that this many
intention,
minds come together and accidentally produce these outcomes.
We were speaking about it on the live that we did on Instagram recently about the film Delivery, and how the way that the system is set up, that I used to sort of think, wow, Kemi's got some very extreme views about what is intentional and what's not intentional. And as time's gone on and we've had more conversation, as I've witnessed more and more, it might not be a consciously intentional thing of individual people, may not be, but if you are leaving people in a state where they are not having a physiological birth, they are not bonding in the way that Simon and I have done with our baby in our birth, and you get this distraction, this disassociation, this trauma that leaves you in life, it makes more money for all of industry. If you're depressed, you tend to buy more stuff to try and buy yourself happiness. You know, if you are not, you know, there's the kind of society perpetuation of being a strong man and holding a strong space. It makes it difficult for people to actually express when they're struggling and they're having difficulties, and seek help. Because it's kind of frowned upon if you actually do that. And Simon has been able to have that kind of safe discussion with B, but a lot of couples are not at a place where they can do that for one another, and for whatever reason it's difficult. No. And so it is creating the cogs in the machine. And if you traumatise a dad and a mum or a partner and a baby, you've got a three-fer rather than a two-fer. You know, we say about the 2 for 1, don't you?
Yeah, I'm very strong on them doing their twofers, but you're right, it is a threefer. And, you know, mine is a prime example. My ex-husband and I were working through some difficulties just being a young couple, but the final nail in the coffin was me feeling abandoned by him at the birth, because he was siding with you know, everyone in the unit, because he was frightened and he saw them as better. You know, they've got badges on and, you know, titles.
Experience.
And so, experience. But experience of what? We now know is of stoving in birth. Yeah. So, but he sided with them because poor guy, you know, he felt out of his depth. But all I remembered postpartum was, you actually abandoned me and ridiculed me for even thinking that a baby could come out of my vagina, when I was the first person in my entire line to have a baby cut out of them. You know, all my ancestors had given birth on ships, in the bowel of ships. The transatlantic slave trade had given birth in fields, in barns, successfully, because I was here. I was there on the planet. And then I was the first person in my line who'd had a baby cut out of me. And he obviously didn't want to face the role that he played, so he ridiculed me. He was a young man. I was a young woman. I'm not blaming him for his response, but that eventually made me think I'm not safe with this guy. So this is a big deal. This is why I was so happy that you were willing to come and speak to us, Simon, on this issue about the role of partners and how vital it is that you also have a healthy experience. But, you know, yes, of course, your baby inside of the mother, of course, primarily, that's the acute focus, but we can't sideline partners.
No, I mean, in general, it's educating, isn't it? And then that's empowerment if it's proper education. I don't think human beings live long enough to be able to convey all their experiences. We get an enormous amount of experience through our life. The older we are, the more in context that experience becomes, and you can then compare and contrast early experiences with other ones, which is something you can't do when you're younger. So I'm very happy to be able to pass that on, because you know, eventually we grow old and die with that experience. Everyone has to start again. So it's nice to be able to pass on those things, hopefully to younger people, who then have a chance to understand it earlier in their life.
Yeah, and that's the point. That's why it's good for us to listen to each other.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier on in the beginning, you can have an idea about how things might go. And in the end, that actually wasn't that helpful for you, because things really didn't go that way. And that almost felt worse. And I think from what I remember during my birth was when you called and they sent somebody, I felt like you just completely went into a freeze state. Like, I almost have this image of you just standing there, like, and all these paramedics are trying to force me out of the pool when I didn't want to be there, and I was sort of trying to hide in the pool, and they were trying to drag me out, and that you literally were just, oh shit, essentially in a free state from the previous trauma that you had, kind of almost seeing this, oh no, it's going to go how it was before. And this is the thing, that trauma really impacts how you are then in difficult situations. It really impacts how you are, and that I really was mindful that I didn't want you to feel bad about that, because we had spoken and I'd said, I am not going to call anybody. I know I'm not going to call anybody unless there's a problem. So I know I can birth this baby. I feel very secure in what my body can do, but I know that actually you feel you might need to have somebody there, and that's okay. But then I could see in your mind, like, oh God, what have I done? They're dragging her out the pool. She's completely butt naked with a stranger close to her private parts, which is a massive trigger because I have been assaulted in the past. There was a male paramedic behind me. I never saw his face, and bless him, I felt a bit sorry for him because we didn't have much space between the end of the bed and the wall. So he was like, this against me. He kept trying to hang a towel over to like protect my dignity, which of course kept falling off, and kept trying to offer me gas and air. This is the thing, because as a medic, he's thinking this person's in discomfort, they're in pain, I want to try and help them. I didn't need that help. What I needed was everybody to just fuck off, basically. And I was screaming fuck off in my head, but I couldn't get it out of my mouth because I was so focused on the thing. So I can't tell you how grateful I was when that midwife turned up and ushered them out the room, and I was able to get back in the pool, because I knew Seb was so close, and I was just like, I just need you all to go away, but I couldn't say it. I literally couldn't say it. I was so
that was the thing,
so
and
that she wasn't awful.
It was you not being able to express yourself that led me to thinking, I don't know what's going on. And I don't consciously remember thinking any of those things, but subconsciously, you saw it exactly right. And looking back, that's exactly what it was. All of those things, like going into the previous state of the trauma from the previous births, and then realizing, oh my God, what have I done? So it was tricky, and we were lucky that I wish I could remember her name, but we were lucky that midwife came along who had the understanding of the whole situation and took control, got rid of them, restored normality, and it continued. So it was very good from then on.
And that's actually the job of the midwife. I just wish we were more picky with
she did her job.
With who we allowed to adopt that role, because most of the people are obstetric nurses, they're not midwives.
She did say afterwards that she worked as a private midwife a lot and was just doing a few shifts in the NHS, so she was very much used to supporting physiological birth, and she was great in that way. I think she really helped Simon then feel calm. And
did you mean independent midwife or private midwife?
Independent, not from the company private midwives, but
because it'll be an independent midwife that's more used to seeing undisturbed birth.
Yeah, and obviously this was, this was 12, 13 years ago now. So, the climate was a little bit, was different back then. I say a little bit. I mean, I think massively different, because now it's so much more medicalised routinely.
We were lucky.
And things. We were so lucky. This is the thing, and I think Si has realised that more and more as time has gone on, and all of the midwives I've worked with that haven't been great. So there's been very few that I've I can count on one hand, less than a hand, the number of actually good midwives that I've worked with since, who have been respectful. So I think there's definitely an element of thank fuck for that. We were so lucky,
seriously,
which is sad, isn't it? Because that shouldn't be the case, but it is.
It is sad, and you're right that I'm realising more and more, because as time's gone on, I've wished more and more that I could go back and thank her. It's a bit like when I was at college in engineering, and a maths teacher who I'd never met before suddenly unlocked my ability to do maths, because I was bad at it. And it wasn't until later I realised I can do all this stuff now. I thought, I want to go back and thank him. And unfortunately, I think he's retired or ill or or possibly even dead by the time I wanted to do that, and I couldn't get hold of him. So these thanks, unfortunately, don't go out to the people who deserve it at the time, because you don't realise at the time.
Yes.
But we were lucky, so it's good.
So, Si, I appreciate that we're sort of running out of time, and Kemi's got to head off to see family and things.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to wrap up, but I'd just like to ask what you would say to partners who may be scared of birth, or scared of something going wrong, or scared of supporting a physiological birth. What do you think would have been maybe the most helpful thing that somebody could have said to you at any time?
You need a daddy doula. Someone to look after the father, who understands how the partner will see these things. That's what I would say. I mean, there's not much point in me saying about my experiences and then say don't worry about them, because they're going to be in exactly the same situation I was. Somebody would have said that then, I'd still have worried, because you haven't been through it. So until you've been through it, you don't understand really. But you do need the backing of somebody who can support you through the process, just to assure you that what's happening is normal, and put you at ease. It's very easy to do. In fact, if someone's got that experience, I could do it now. I could be a daddy doula. They would then relax more. They just need to be led through it. So in real time, there's nothing like it. It changes the whole of the rest of your life.
Because it is a rite of passage, it is about having a guide there who isn't necessarily doing, there's not doing anything, but is holding you through that transformational and transitional process, to let you know this is hard. It is hard, but it's okay. Everything is okay at the moment. You are safe in this moment.
So they're not doing much except for just explaining, but that is a lot.
That is a lot, because you can't, it's like a lot of people, I think they find becoming a doula quite accessible, but you're still not a good doula unless you can act as the guide. You might be as startled as the partner is. Equally with childbirth, most of the time, baby will slide out after hours or occasionally days, but sometimes that's not the case, which is why I feel like most people should be able to choose an excellent midwife. Not any midwife.
Yeah.
I feel probably 5 in 100 midwives are, good enough, really, sadly, at the moment. So ideally for birth, the safest combo would be independent midwife, or a really good establishment midwife with a doula and well-informed, prepared parents.
Yeah.
That seems to be a really nice combo, and I just feel like so few people are able or have access to that. And I'm kind of disgusted that there's so many people with the title midwife that aren't midwives. I think that's one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, they're not with women. I would also recommend that you interview a few people. Don't settle on the first person unless you have that gut feeling this is right.
100%.
And I would say, when you have the gut feeling that it's the right person to support you, this is you as a couple, then you found the person. But you may not. You may talk to somebody who is a doula. They might be well respected. They might have got on fine with other people. But if you just don't feel that thing, that just don't quite feel a connection, forget it. Go on to somebody else. Don't think about cost, because it's the most precious thing you'll do. So the cost is irrelevant, and in fact, you probably get. It's like everything in life. You may get what you pay for. So I'm not saying it's absolutely true of this kind of thing, but you might. Some people who are not confident with what they do charge less because they want the business. It's simple human nature. So go looking, and don't 100%. Settle until you feel that gut feeling. Yes, I want this person here helping us.
100%.
Okay, well, I suppose I better wrap up so that Kemi can head off and see family, and I can head off and give
Nice
my
to see
husband
you,
a big
Kemi.
cuddle in the other room to thank him for coming on today and us putting him through the ringer and asking him all the difficult questions. Thank you very much,
It's been a
Simon,
therapy
for your
day for
time
me.
and your reflections. It's really an important conversation to have, and I think that people often kind of dismiss and minimise what partners are going through in birth, and I want us to really understand that in order to support physiological birth, in order for it to work well for everybody in the space, that partners being held as well as the person birthing really is so vitally important. And that, you know, if you want somebody strong in your space, you know, we think of the partners being the strong protective person of the birth space. Well, we need to give them the tools to be able to do that. Be that good antenatal education, be that time speaking with somebody experienced. You know, both Kemi and I offer calls where you can speak with your partner to us about how birth works, how you can best support it. We can give you information about who and what you're looking for in a good doula or birth keeper or midwife, independent midwife, if you are wanting the best for your birth, because, you know, you become parents only a small number of times in your life, and how that goes impacts how you feel for the rest of your life. You know, Simon's first children are grown up. They're grown-ups now, and you can see how those births have impacted his whole life and how he feels about things and his reflections on those. So do it right first time. Don't think I'll go to the hospital for the first birth and then be at home the second time, because you will carry that trauma from that forever. You know, just get it right first time is what I'm trying to say, and it's not because I'm trying to get business for me and Kemi, because there are other people available that you can speak to, but please please understand that your birth of your children is the single most important beginning for the rest of your lives as a family together. Don't fuck around. Don't fuck around. That's it. Okay, I'm done. Anybody else want to say anything?
No.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us and our chat today, and we will see you next time for what may be the last episode of season 1. We're going to round all up and talk about the red thread through history and why we are in the situation we're in today, and maybe what we can do about it in the future. Lots of love, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You can sign up to the Birth Untethered mailing list from the link in the show notes, become an Untethered Rebel, support the show, and join the growing community that meet together online each month to share collective wisdom, support one another, and also to receive extra resources that supplement podcast episodes. The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and may not reflect those of the hosts. This content does not replace